Good morning, everybody. It is Sunday morning here in the upper Midwest at the Jazz Shepherd Cafe. As you all can see, I cut my hair off. It was this time. It was holding a lot of tension, stress, and it's getting tattered, and just the gray and the exhaustion of. I hadn't cut it since the pandemic started. And then the whole thing with my wife and economics and business and stuff. It's been a lot of stress. So letting that hair go was a bit of a relief, both temperature-wise, stress weight-wise. It just takes years off me as well when you look at me. So that's out of the way now. I've had a few people comment about my take on the local mentality, and it's not like I just rushed to that conclusion. It's not like I'm just projecting. It comes back to me what people are saying. I mean, there was an old guy walking around town telling people he'll never step foot in here because of all the N-word music that I play. So it wasn't like I just guessed that was part of the reason here. The demographic is what it is. The American divide is what it is. I didn't create that. I didn't manufacture that. I'm just kind of stuck living in the residual effects of it. Alright, so yeah, it wasn't like I just came to that conclusion willy-nilly. It was 18 months of seeing things as they played out. But so anyway, people with their comments, some of them I just don't think it's valid, but it is what it is. Today I want to talk to you about Mary Wells, who I have most of her work back on the Motown label, and she ends up on a few other labels in the 70s and then kind of disappears, sadly. Cool cover, not very typical for the Motown label, to be honest. Early Motown, I think it's her second release on Motown. But when I listened to it, and this is the only one of hers I didn't have. I have all the other ones for a long time, years and years. And I finally found one of these when I looked the other day on Discogs. I found it for a decent price, and it's in nice condition. But why I'm bringing it up and why I'm listening to it is it was astounding how much it made me think of Amy Winehouse, Adele, Duffy, and a slew of other, especially British pop / R&B singers, and just how far but not far the music has come in some ways. And there's a timelessness to what this music represents. Sharon Jones and the Daptones, that whole Daptone label, the analog sound, the real instrumentation. When you listen to Adele and when you listen to Amy Winehouse and when you listen to a lot of the other stuff that's kind of throwbacky, it's amazing how much you hear Motown and the old black soul music of America, and it's just so omnipresent. And having not played any Motown in a while, when I listened to that record, I was just like, man, it's crazy how verbatim they're echoing that stuff. From the bass lines and James Jamerson's innovations, and I talked recently about how he impacted Paul McCartney and how Paul McCartney listening to Jamerson really changed the direction of his bass lines, which changed the direction of Beatles melodies. Rubber Soul and Revolver, it was a whole new world Beatles sounding, and from Paul just playing the notes to suddenly playing a whole different approach on the bass. It's a pretty impactful thing, black soul music in America. And of course, black soul music comes from the jump blues, which comes from jazz and the blues. So it's all one lineage, one tree trunk of that black American experience, overcoming the tyranny and struggle of life in poverty and living in America in that dual system of injustice. It's lost, I think, on a lot of Americans just how difficult times were for Black Americans. I think a lot of us kind of live in a vacuum and don't really see how charged that time was and how difficult it was. But I'm listening to right now to Kenny Burrell on Concord. And like I said in the last episode, I've been working a lot on my music lately, so I haven't had time to listen to a ton of records in the cafe. But this Burrell record, I guess it's on Concord if I remember, probably an 80s pressing, an 80s release, I should say, with Larry Gales and Carl Burnett. Does it have the year? I'm not sure it does. 79. This is good stuff, When Lights Are Low. It's an old radio copy from WYBC. Not sure where that's from in terms of that radio station. But you got some Fats Waller, some Ellington. It's just good stuff. And Burrell's such a beautiful player. It's the type of jazz that anybody could put on and never have to squint or be uncomfortable with anything too edgy or angular. And this is a far better representation of what jazz is than, say, something like this, which Joe Henderson Inner Urge is a fantastic record. But this is the edges of the jazz kingdom, not the center. And, I mean, this is not that far out, but it definitely is far more out than this. And a guy came the other day and requested it, and I was happy to play it for him. But again, it's actually a fairly, I don't say difficult, but it's not easy listening by any stretch. It's really good stuff. And of course, the impact and influence of John Coltrane is very present in Joe Henderson's playing. You have McCoy Tyner on the piano, Bobby Cranshaw on the bass, and Elvin Jones on the drums. And so you have a bit of a Coltrane rhythm section there as well with Tyner and Jones. This is blue note beyond hard bop into that post hard bop. Not quite avant-garde, but it's definitely, and it's not free jazz, but it definitely has more angles, hints of dissonance, intensity, rawness. And for a lot of us as jazz listeners, we love that stuff. But it's less appealing to those who are in the room and don't know what to anticipate or maybe aren't in the mood for that sonic landscape. And that's, I think, what a lot of us forget at times with jazz. When we play jazz for other people, we need to consider where they're at emotionally and their mindset and prepare people for the outer edges with some of the milky, creamy stuff on the inside. But it's a great record, don't get me wrong. I love Henderson. He makes some records in the 80s on Verve Forecast, if I remember, that were kind of bossa nova-ish and real beautiful playing. Henderson can play a ballad with the best of them. But again, this was a younger Joe Henderson, a bit more challenged, a bit more fury. Civil rights was just probably 65 or 6. So it was a difficult time in America still. Vietnam was on the horizon. There was so much tension. The Watts riots in Detroit, everything was just in flames. So it's quite a natural thing for that aggression, that tenacity, and that tension to reveal itself throughout the layers of what the black jazz canon was doing. And it's definitely on that peripheral edge. It's got a lot of Coltrane's sonic intensity and dimension playing throughout it. It's a great piece, classic late Blue Note, a year or so before the sale to Liberty, which of course became United Artists quite quickly after that. Great stuff, a great piece, and an album worth seeking out. I have a couple different copies of that record. This I played last week, Detour to the Moon by Marianne McCall, who's a great singer. I enjoy her stuff a lot. It's on the Jubilee label, Herb Abramson's label, who was a former partner at Atlantic with the Erdogan brothers, and he left and went to form his own label, Jubilee. There's probably about 20 10-inches and maybe 120 LPs before they kind of went their own direction off into pop and different comedy and different things. But the Jubilee 1000 series, up to about 1120, there's some really solid titles. I've talked about Jubilee numerous times, from about 1045, 1050 through 1100. There's 40, 50 great titles in there that are worth seeking out. The covers start to become very much cheesecake by the time you get to 57, 58, 59. They're very much pretty white girl on the cover, regardless of who's playing on the record. She's doing songs here that are all kind of lunar in their landscape, if you like my alliteration right there. Detour ahead, I wished on the moon was yellow on the crazy, oh you crazy moon. Moonlight becomes you, moon glow, you get the theme going on here. Shine on, harvest moon, blue moon, east of the sun, no moon at all, it's only a paper moon and moon country. It's atmospheric, it's melancholic, it's beautiful. It's very much a jazz ensemble playing behind her. Nat Hentoff actually does the liner notes here, which tells you that it's a fairly jazz-driven session. Looks like we have Mal Waldron's on that. Does that say Billy Bauer? Oh, Bill Russo, sorry. The print's so small in my eyes, right what they once were. But yeah, it's really good record. I mean, something that you can play back to back to back when you have guests and company, and they'll enjoy that and let that wash over them. So, short episode today. I just wanted to share a couple records and again talk to you about some of the feedback from the last episode. And I'm trying to stay positive. I'm trying to stay objective as I can. It's just the money's been stressful ever since the wife departed, and we're doing what we can to survive. And it is what it is. It's not just me having animosity towards people on the opposite side. People forget I'm a Canadian. I'm not even an American citizen. I don't vote. I don't get too worked up with American politics. I think the American left is quite right-center in a global perspective, and capitalism is run amok and really destroyed the values and virtues of this civilization and society that was once a grand, great people. They've stripped us of our education and our intellect. The amount of Americans who can't find world places on a map today is shocking and reveals a lot about an education system that has been deteriorated by an agenda. It's not just about dollars and cents. It's about people who are less informed are more likely to be afraid, and people who are afraid are far more inclined to have hate. Fear and hate are very interwoven fabrics, and fear and hate is how you control people. Every empire in history has done it. And the fact that most Americans don't know the capital of my country, Canada, we live right next door, we're huge trade partners. Their hockey club in the capital is a reference to it being the capital, the Ottawa Senators. And yet 99% of Americans don't know. I meet far more African cab drivers from Ethiopia, Somalia, Kenya that know the capital of my country. I mean, that's ethnocentrism at its finest. It's not just me projecting. But yeah, it's really crazy hearing some of those British. I mean, it's true for American singers as well. I mean, even your Britney Spears and a lot of those pop singers, they're doing black R&B through a very pop filtered lens. R&B is such a vernacular, such a language with the pattern and the groove and the repetition and how it makes you want to move and dance and feel sexual. It's very much a black innovation, which was a response to struggle and tyranny. Sexuality and dancing is a joy that helps one overcome the darkness of the day they're living in. I mean, it's not just this random connection. It's very much linked. Experience drives art, and it's always a reflection of the times that it's made in. Any art that you don't have the historical context to understand, you don't really understand that art. And anybody who thinks they're listening to any kind of music or any kind of art in general without any kind of historical context, you're not really perceiving it. It's you can't remove that. I mean, I've said this before, but the Tchaikovsky 1812 Overture, if you don't know Russian history, that piece means nothing to you. If you don't understand the Crimean War and just what was happening in Russia at the time, I mean, you're not hearing the battlefield. You're not hearing what that song's expressing. So art needs to be interwoven with the history and the time that it's made in to help us understand and comprehend where it's being expressed from. So anyway, Marianne McCall, a great record. on Jubilee. It goes for 20, 30, 40 bucks. It's worth finding if you can seek it out. The Joe Henderson's fantastic stuff, but again, I was surprised kind of just how edgy it was and how much the guests who asked for it enjoyed it. But I could see other guests weren't really loving it. It's a bit more difficult. And then, of course, the Kenny Burrell record is just fantastic. It's what's playing right now, and it's something that anybody can enjoy. Hope you all like the haircut. I mean, do I look younger? I think everyone's telling me I look 10 years younger, which, I mean, it's a good thing. As Will Smith once said in Men in Black, the difference between you and me is I make this look good. I'm trying to look good for 51. So y'all be blessed. Y'all stay safe. We'll talk to y'all soon. I got some good content coming. I got some fun ideas coming for episodes. Just been dealing with a lot of stuff. We've got the town fair in town this week, which I was hoping was going to give you a bit more of a boost than it has, but the weather did not cooperate. Spent a bunch of money on kebabs and hardly sold anything because it was pouring all day. So it's the fabric of life. You just got to struggle through it, and all in all, we're still blessed. All in all, we're still fortunate. All in all, we're still silver spoon in our mouths compared to how most people in history have lived. You got to never forget that. You have to always have to that contextualization of time and place, and having warmth and heat and warm water and those things. They're luxuries that most humans never got to appreciate and enjoy. Having food in your stomach on a daily basis without having to struggle for it, having to chase down some berries and beans. I mean, that's a much tougher life, and that's why you died at 35. So anyway, all count your blessings. Listen to that jazz music. Appreciate all your comments and feedback. There is love in this world. You got to just struggle to find it. I try to stay in that light as often as I can. It does get hard at times. Tensions do build and mount, but we're here to overcome. And if the black community in America could overcome their struggle, I just got to put my shoes on one day at a time and realize that you're still breathing, you're still waking up every morning, you still got good things going on. So y'all be safe. We'll talk to y'all soon. Peace.